My name is Ava Reynolds, and I'm 32 now, but there is still a $2 bill in my wallet that I have never spent. It is folded so many times the edges feel soft, almost like cloth, and every time my fingers touch it, I remember being 14 years old at a gas station off E76, 80 miles from home, standing under a buzzing light while the car that brought me there disappeared onto the highway. I remember the sound of a door slamming. I remember a hand shoving that bill into my palm like I was a problem that could be paid off cheap. And I remember the words that came after it. Man up and find your own ride home. I was a girl, a kid, wearing a hoodie too thin for the night air, but apparently I was old enough to be abandoned for talking back. I had argued over music in the back seat. That was all. One small act of disobedience, one moment of refusing to sit silent while adults decided my voice did not matter. Then the engine started, the tires rolled over gravel, and the people who were supposed to protect me left me there like trash. I did not have a phone. I did not have enough money for food. I was too scared to ask the wrong stranger for help, so I spent that night curled behind a dumpster, close enough to the station lights to feel seen, but hidden enough to feel safe. By sunrise, something inside me had gone quiet. The girl who still believed family meant home did not survive that night. 18 years later, that same $2 bill came with me to a luxury wedding by a lake, tucked inside my purse like a secret with sharp teeth. Before I tell you what happened when I walked into that wedding and saw the people who left me behind smiling like a perfect family, tell me this. What time is it where you are right now, and where are you watching from? I want to know how far this story travels before the truth does. After that night, the house in the suburbs outside Pittsburgh never felt like a house again. It was just a place where my clothes were kept, where my school papers sat on the kitchen counter, where people used my name only when they needed someone to blame. My father, Richard Reynolds, never apologized. He did not pull me aside and say he had gone too far. He did not ask if I had been scared. He just sat at breakfast the next morning, drinking coffee like he had not left his 14-year-old daughter 80 miles from home with $2 and a lesson he thought sounded strong. My mother, Diane, acted like the whole thing was embarrassing only because I refused to forget it fast enough. Whenever I got quiet, she sighed and said I was being dramatic. Whenever I avoided family dinners, she said I was punishing everyone, and my older brother Tyler found ways to turn it into a joke. If I asked for a ride, he would smirk and say, "Better check your wallet." If I stayed in my room too long, he would call through the door. "Careful, Ava might run away again." That was the part nobody outside our house understood. The worst part was not just being left. It was coming home and realizing they were already rewriting it. In their version, I was stubborn. I was disrespectful. I had needed a scare. I had learned a lesson. In my version, I learned that family could abandon you and still expect you to sit at the dinner table like nothing happened. So I stopped explaining. I stopped begging them to see me. I became quiet in a way that was not peaceful. I finished high school by treating every day like a hallway I had to walk through to reach an exit. I worked after school at a grocery store, then at a diner on weekends, saving cash in a shoebox under my bed because I knew nobody in that house was going to help me leave. When college brochures came in the mail, my mother tossed them on the counter and said Chicago was too far. My father said social work was not a real career, just feelings with paperwork. Tyler said I would come crawling back before winter. I smiled, filled out my forms, applied for aid, and left anyway. Chicago was not easy. It was loud, expensive, and lonely in a different way. But loneliness in a city where nobody owes you love feels cleaner than loneliness inside a family that keeps pretending it loves you. I went to class, worked late shifts, ate cheap soup, and learned how to make a small apartment feel safe. Years later, I became a social worker, not because I wanted to live inside my pain forever, but because I knew what it looked like when a teenager said, I am fine, and meant, please notice, I am not fine. I worked with kids whose parents called them difficult, selfish, unstable, too sensitive, too much. I knew those words. I knew how they could become a cage if nobody challenged them. Some days I sat across from a 15-year-old with a backpack on her lap and saw myself so clearly it hurt. Other days I went home, fed my cat Luna, and let her curl against my side, while I reminded myself that a peaceful life did not have to be loud to be real. Luna had been found behind an apartment building, skinny and angry, hissing at anyone who reached for her. I understood her immediately. We did not heal each other in some magical way. We just learned slowly that not every hand was a threat. And through all of it, that $2 bill stayed in my wallet. I did not keep it because I wanted revenge every morning. I kept it because some part of me needed proof. Proof that I had not imagined it. Proof that the girl behind that dumpster had existed. Proof that when the people who were supposed to protect me chose not to, I still found a way home. For 18 years, I heard nothing from them that mattered. A few blocked numbers, a couple of emails written like overdue notices instead of apologies, one message from my mother asking if I planned to keep punishing the family forever. Not one sentence that sounded like remorse. Not one question about who I had become. By the time I turned 32, I had built a life so separate from them that their absence felt less like a wound and more like an old scar that only ached when the weather changed. Then, one Thursday afternoon after work, I came home to my Chicago apartment and found a thick ivory envelope waiting in my mailbox. There was no return address. The handwriting on the front was careful and familiar, with dramatic loops on the capital letters, the kind my mother used when she wanted something to look warmer than it was. I stood in the lobby holding that envelope while a neighbor's dog barked near the elevator and my pulse climbed in my throat. I almost threw it away unopened. I wish I had been the kind of person who could do that. Instead, I carried it upstairs, set my bag down, fed Luna, and opened it at my kitchen table. Inside was a wedding invitation printed on heavy paper with gold lettering. Tyler Reynolds and Brooke Whitaker request the honor of your presence. I read the words twice before I let myself breathe. Tyler was getting married at a luxury lakeside lodge in the Finger Lakes region of New York, the kind of place with polished wood beams, private docks, formal dress codes, and photos that looked expensive before anyone even stood in them. Tucked behind the invitation was a folded note. Ava, we know things have been distant, but it would mean a lot to the family if you came. Tyler asked us to reach out personally. We hope this can be a step toward reconnecting. Love, Mom and Dad. I laughed once and it came out so sharp that Luna jumped off the chair. Distant. That was the word they chose. Not abandoned, not erased. Not left at a gas station with $2 and no phone. Distant. Like we had misplaced each other at a crowded mall. I pulled my wallet from my purse and took out the $2 bill. The paper was faded and soft, but I still knew every crease. I laid it beside the invitation, and for a moment my kitchen felt smaller than it was. I did what people do when they receive news from a life they tried to bury. I searched. Brooke Whitaker was easy to find. Her family was known around Pittsburgh and parts of upstate New York. Charity events, business boards, fundraisers, glossy engagement photos with captions about gratitude and new beginnings. She looked kind in the photos. Not fake kind, but genuinely soft around the eyes. That bothered me more than if she had looked cruel. Then I found their wedding website. It had a section called Our Story. Most of it was predictable. How they met, their first date, how Tyler proposed by the water. But one line made my stomach tighten. Tyler wrote that he had learned loyalty from his close-knit family, and that family was the foundation of the man he had become. I read that line until the words blurred. Close-knit family, loyalty, Foundation. He had taken the house that broke me and turned it into a marketing phrase for his wedding guests. I wondered what he had told Brooke about me. Maybe that I was difficult. Maybe that I ran away. Maybe that I cut everyone off for no reason. Maybe he had not mentioned me at all until somebody asked why his only sister was not on the guest list. That was when I knew I would go. Not because I wanted to scream. Not because I wanted to throw wine on a dress or make a scene people could dismiss as bitterness. I would go because there are lies that grow stronger when decent people stay quiet around them. I sent one email to the RSVP address listed on the site. Hello, Brooke. This is Ava Reynolds. I received the invitation and I will attend. Please do not mention it to Tyler yet. I would rather not make the weekend uncomfortable before it needs to be. Thank you. I stared at the screen before hitting send, aware that every word sounded calm because I had spent my whole life learning how to sound calm. Then I opened my wallet again, slid the $2 bill back inside, and whispered to the 14-year-old girl I used to be, "We are not going there to beg. We are going there to be seen." I spent the next few days preparing in a way that looked ordinary from the outside and felt surgical from the inside. I did not buy a dress meant to compete with the bride or announce myself from across the room. I chose a simple black, long-sleeved dress that looked formal, respectful, and impossible to dismiss as attention-seeking. I booked a room at the same lakeside lodge where the wedding party had reserved a block, using my full name because I was done hiding from people who had never bothered looking for me. I arranged for a friend to check on Luna, packed one small suitcase, and placed the $2 bill in the inner pocket of my purse where my hand could find it without looking. Before I left Chicago, I stood in my apartment doorway longer than I needed to. Luna sat on the couch, blinking at me like she knew I was walking into old weather. I told her I would be back in 2 days. It felt important to say that out loud. The drive to the Finger Lakes was long enough for memories to try every door in my mind. I remembered the gas station lights. I remembered the dumpster smell, sour and metallic. I remembered calling my school counselor the next morning from a phone near the counter. My voice so flat I barely sounded like myself. I remembered promising myself that if I ever escaped, I would never give those people another chance to make me feel small. And yet there I was, driving toward them in a rented car with a dress hanging in the back and a past they had buried sitting in my purse. The lodge looked even more perfect in person than it did online. It sat near the water with wide windows, stone walkways, white flowers, and staff members who smiled like every guest had stepped into a magazine. The lake was silver under the late afternoon sun. People in expensive clothes moved across the grounds holding champagne and welcome bags. Everything smelled like pine, perfume, and money. I checked in, took the elevator to my room, and stood at the window looking down at the rehearsal dinner terrace. Then I saw them. Richard Reynolds looked older, heavier around the face, but he still stood like the room owed him space. Diane wore a pale blue dress and pearls, laughing with one hand on her chest, performing warmth for strangers. Tyler stood near the bar in a tailored jacket, smiling like a man who had never been forced to answer for anything. For a moment, my body forgot I was 32. My chest tightened. My fingers went cold. Then I put my hand on my purse and felt the bill through the lining. I was not 14. I was not stranded. I was not waiting for them to come back. I went downstairs. I did not approach them right away. I stood near the edge of the terrace with a glass of water and watched the family I had been born into entertain the family Tyler was marrying into. Brooke's mother, Margaret Whitaker, noticed me first. She was elegant in a navy dress, silver hair pulled neatly back, the kind of woman who looked polite but not easily fooled. She walked over with a careful smile and said, "You must be Ava." Hearing my name from a stranger at my brother's wedding did something strange to me. I said yes and shook her hand. She told me Brooke was glad I had come, that Tyler had mentioned there had been distance in the family. There was that word again. Distance. I looked at Margaret and wondered how many lies had been folded into that one soft word. I said, "There has been more than distance, but tonight is not the time for that." Her smile changed, just slightly. Not fear, curiosity. Before she could ask anything else, Tyler saw me. His face did not collapse completely, but I saw the moment his performance slipped. His eyes moved from me to the people around us, calculating who might notice. He crossed the terrace quickly, still smiling for anyone watching, and leaned in close enough that only I could hear him. "Ava, I did not think you were actually coming. You invited me," I said. "Mom and Dad invited you. That is different." I looked at him for a long second. "You always were good at making other people do the uncomfortable part." His jaw tightened. "Do not start anything this weekend. Brooke does not need drama." I almost laughed. Drama was what they called truth when it arrived without permission. I said, "Then maybe you should have told her the truth before I got here." His face went pale in a way that confirmed more than denial ever could. He said, "Whatever you think happened, this is my wedding." I said, "I know exactly what happened. And tomorrow, if everyone insists on calling this family, they should know what kind." The next morning, the wedding looked like a dream built by people who had never been afraid of waking up. White chairs were arranged beside the lake in perfect rows. A floral arch stood near the water, full of pale roses and greenery. A string quartet played something soft enough to make everyone lower their voices. Guests moved carefully over the grass in polished shoes, adjusting sunglasses, hugging old friends, admiring the view. I sat in the last row because there was no place reserved for me anywhere else. I preferred it that way. From the back, I could see everything. Richard and Diane sat near the front, smiling at people who probably knew them as generous, respectable, family-centered. Tyler stood beneath the arch, one hand folded over the other, wearing the expression of a man practicing humility in public. When Brooke appeared, the guests turned toward her with that collective breath weddings always create. She looked beautiful, but what struck me was not the dress. It was her face. She looked trusting. She looked like someone walking toward a future she believed had been honestly offered to her. I wondered if anyone had ever warned her that some families do not hide their cruelty because they are ashamed of it. They hide it because it works better that way. The ceremony was brief and polished. Vows, rings, laughter at the right places, applause when they kissed. People stood, smiled, took photos, and told each other it was perfect. I clapped too, because Brooke had done nothing to me, and I refused to make my pain sloppy enough for them to use against me. The reception was held inside a glass-walled hall overlooking the lake. Chandeliers hung over the tables. Candles floated in small bowls. The seating chart stood near the entrance in gold frames. I scanned it once, then again. My name was not there. Not under Reynolds. Not under extended family. Not anywhere. For a second, the old humiliation rose up so quickly I almost stepped backward. Then Diane appeared beside me with a glass of white wine and a smile too thin to be kind. "Oh, Ava, there must have been a mistake with the seating." I looked at her. "Did you forget I existed again? Or was that part intentional?" Her eyes sharpened. "This is not the place." That sentence had followed me my entire life. Not the place, not the time, not the tone, not the right way. People like my mother were always willing to discuss pain later, somewhere private, somewhere controllable, somewhere nobody important could hear it. Richard walked up next. He did not hug me. He did not say my name like he missed it. He just looked at me and said, "You look well." I said, "I lived." His face hardened, but he said nothing. Then Tyler came over, moving fast, smile fixed in place because guests were passing behind him. "We need to talk," he said. I followed him a few steps toward a hallway near the restrooms, close enough to be private but not hidden. He turned on me the second we stopped. "What are you doing?" "Attending the wedding I was invited to." "You know what I mean." "I do," I said. "You are asking whether I plan to behave like the version of me you invented for Brooke? Or the real one?" He looked over his shoulder. "Keep your voice down." That right there was the answer to every question I had carried for 18 years. He was not sorry. He was scared someone would hear. I asked him, "Did you tell her about I-76? His face twitched. "Ava, did you tell her about the gas station? That was years ago. You made it home." I stared at him because those 4 words were more cruel than a denial. You made it home. As if survival erased the crime. As if fear did not count if the child eventually found a door. I said, "I was 14. He sighed like I was exhausting him. "You always did this. You take one bad night and build your whole identity around it." I felt my hand close around the strap of my purse. "No, Tyler. You built your identity around pretending it never happened." His eyes narrowed. "I am warning you, do not ruin this for me." "For you," I said softly. "Not for Brooke. Not for the people you lied to. For you." Before he could answer, the band leader announced dinner service, and guests began returning to their tables. I found an empty chair near the back, beside a couple who assumed I was a distant cousin. I ate very little. I watched speeches being prepared, glasses being filled, laughter rising under the chandeliers. My family sat near the front, still performing. Tyler leaned toward Brooke and whispered something that made her glance toward me. She did not look angry. She looked confused. That gave me one final piece of certainty. He had not told her enough. Maybe he had told her I was unstable. Maybe he had told her I hated the family. But he had not told her why his sister could sit through an entire wedding with a $2 bill in her purse and a lifetime of silence sitting beside her like another guest. When the plates were cleared and the first toast began, I stopped touching my water glass. Brooke's father spoke about trust. The best man spoke about loyalty. Tyler smiled through every word like those concepts belonged to him. Then the microphone was placed back on its stand, and the room relaxed into that warm, careless mood people have when they believe all the difficult parts of the day are over. I stood before I could talk myself out of it. The chair scraped softly behind me. A few people turned. Tyler saw me first. Diane's face drained of color. Richard's hand tightened around his glass. I walked to the microphone calmly with my purse at my side, and for the first time all weekend nobody could pretend I was not there. The microphone felt colder than I expected. I adjusted it once, and the small feedback sound made the room go still. People turned in their seats. Some smiled politely, assuming I was part of the program. Others looked toward Tyler, waiting for recognition. He had half risen from his chair, but Brooke touched his arm and said something I could not hear. He sat down, slowly, like a man lowering himself onto a trap. I looked at the guests first, then at Brooke, then finally at the table where my parents sat frozen in their formal clothes. "Good evening," I said. "My name is Ava Reynolds. I am Tyler's sister." A murmur moved through the room, small but immediate. I saw heads turn. I saw Brooke's eyes narrow, not with anger, but with surprise. I let the silence stretch just long enough for everyone to understand that my existence itself was news to some of them. I said, "I was not planning to give a toast tonight. To be honest, I was not even sure I should come, but I received an invitation with a note saying it would mean a lot to the family if I attended. Family is a serious word, and I think it deserves serious honesty." Tyler's mouth tightened. Diane shook her head very slightly, as if she could still mother me into silence from across a ballroom. I continued. When I was 14 years old, I was on a family road trip outside Pittsburgh. We were on I-76, about 80 miles from home, when I argued in the back seat because I did not want to turn off my music and sit quietly while everyone else decided what kind of child I was allowed to be. My father pulled into a gas station. At first, I thought he was cooling off. Then he opened the door, told me to get out, and put $2 in my hand. The room had changed. I could feel it. Laughter died in corners. A server stopped moving near the wall. Brooke stared at me as if the floor had shifted under her chair. I took the bill from my purse and held it up between two fingers. This $2 bill. He told me, "Man up and find your own ride home." Then my family drove away. Nobody spoke, not one person. I could hear the low hum of the sound system, the faint clink of ice settling in a glass. I said, I slept behind a dumpster that night because I had no phone, no ride, and no idea which strangers were safe. The next morning, I called a school counselor who came to get me. When I got home, nobody apologized. My mother said I was dramatic. My brother made jokes. My father acted like abandoning a child was a parenting technique. Richard stood so quickly his chair legs scraped the floor. That is enough. His voice was low, but everyone heard it. I turned toward him. You told me to man up, I said. I am speaking clearly. Isn't that what you wanted? His face went red. Diane began crying, but I knew that cry. It was not grief. It was panic wearing makeup. Tyler came toward the microphone, smiling too hard. Ava has always had a complicated relationship with the family, he said to the room. She has struggled with perspective. I looked at Brooke. Notice what he did not say. He did not say, "It did not happen." Tyler stopped walking. Brooke looked at him, and whatever she saw in his face scared her more than my story did. I kept my voice even. I am not here to hurt the bride. Brooke, you have been kind to me in the few messages we exchanged, and your family has treated me with more basic courtesy in one weekend than mine managed in years. I am saying this because nobody deserves to marry into a lie. Weddings are built on promises, and promises mean nothing if the people making them are comfortable erasing the truth. Tyler whispered my name like a warning. I ignored him. For 18 years, I stayed away. I built my own life. I became a social worker because I know what happens to kids when adults convince them that neglect is discipline and cruelty is love. I have sat with teenagers who believed they were hard to love because someone older called them difficult instead of accountable. And I refuse to sit here tonight and pretend that what happened to me was distance, drama, or a misunderstanding. It was abandonment. It was wrong. And every adult at that table knows it. I pointed, not dramatically, just enough. Richard looked away first. That was the moment the room understood. Not because I had cried, not because I had yelled, but because guilt has a shape when it finally runs out of hiding places. I walked to the head table. Every step sounded too loud. I placed the $2 bill in front of Tyler, right beside the folded napkin with his new initials printed in gold. Consider this my wedding gift, I said, a reminder that family is not what you call yourself in a toast. It is what you do when someone needs you, Diane whispered. Ava, please. I looked at her then, really looked at her, and felt nothing I expected to feel. Not victory, not sadness, not even rage, just a clean, quiet distance that belonged to me. I said, You had 18 years to say please. Then I turned to Brooke. I am sorry you had to learn this here, but I am not sorry you learned it before it was too late. I left through the side doors without waiting for applause, because the truth does not always need an audience after it has been spoken. Behind me, the room stayed silent. No music, no laughter, no perfect wedding noise, Just the sound of a family image cracking open under lights bright enough for everyone to see. Outside, the air by the lake was cold enough to make me realize how hot my face had become. I walked past the flower arrangements, past the valet stand, past a couple of guests who looked at me like they wanted to say something but had no language for it. I did not run. Running belonged to the girl behind the gas station, the one who thought maybe if she chased hard enough the car would stop. I walked, because I had already spent too many years being forced out of rooms. This time, I was leaving on my own. Back in my hotel room, I sat on the edge of the bed with my purse open beside me, staring at the empty pocket where the $2 bill had been. For the first time in 18 years, I did not have it with me. I thought I would feel exposed. Instead, I felt lighter, like I had returned something that was never mine to carry. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. The number was unfamiliar. I almost ignored it. But then I saw the message preview. "This is Brooke." I did not know. I opened it. Her message came in pieces, like she was typing through shaking hands. "He told me you cut everyone off because you hated rules. He said you were always dramatic. He said you refused help. I asked him tonight if your story was true, and he would not answer me. He just kept saying, 'You ruined everything. I need to know. Please tell me the truth.'" So I did. Not all at once. Not with extra poison. Not with the kind of details people add when they want revenge to look bigger than pain. I told her the sequence. I told her the road trip, the gas station, the $2, the dumpster, the counselor, the silence at home. I told her that Tyler had been old enough to know better and comfortable enough to laugh later. Then I wrote one final line. "You do not owe me belief, but you owe yourself the truth before you build a life with people who punish anyone who tells it." She did not respond for almost an hour. When she did, she wrote, "I believe you." The next week, the wedding photos disappeared from social media. Then Brooke called me. Her voice sounded tired but steady. She had spoken to my old school counselor who remembered picking me up. She had asked Tyler directly in front of her parents, and he had finally admitted that yes, I had been left there, but insisted it was not as bad as I made it sound. Brooke said that sentence ended her marriage faster than anything else. They had signed papers, but she was already pursuing an annulment. Her family was furious, not because of embarrassment alone, but because they understood they had been invited to bless a lie. The Whitakers cut Tyler off immediately. No more business introductions, no more shared charity boards, no more family support. Tyler's company had been considering him for a promotion into a leadership role, but after Brooke's family withdrew from a partnership connected to his firm, that opportunity quietly vanished. People did not say he was fired, but they stopped saying he was the future. Richard's damage came next. He owned a small insurance and consulting business that depended heavily on reputation and referrals. The Whitakers had been connected to several of his best clients. Once the story reached that circle, contracts paused, calls went unanswered, and men who used to shake his hand at golf events suddenly had scheduling conflicts. Diane lost the thing she valued most, her image. The women from her church committee and charity luncheons stopped inviting her. Nobody shouted at her in public. They did something worse for a woman like my mother. They became politely unavailable. Then Richard sent me a letter. No apology. No regret. Just anger written in stiff sentences. "You have humiliated this family. You have no idea what you have cost us. If you continue spreading this, there will be consequences." I read it once, scanned it, saved it, and put it in a folder with every other piece of proof I had once been taught not to need. But I did not go to a journalist. I did not put their full names online. That was never the point. Instead, I shared the story anonymously in a private online support group for adults who had survived family abandonment, neglect, and estrangement. I changed identifying details. I kept Brooke's name out of it. I wrote about the $2 bill, the wedding, and the strange grief of finally being believed by strangers before being believed by family. By morning, the post had hundreds of comments. People wrote, "My father did something like this. My mother still calls it discipline. My siblings still say I am dramatic. I thought I was the only one." I sat in my apartment with Luna asleep beside me and cried in a way I had not cried in years, not because I was broken, but because something had opened. As a social worker, I had spent my career telling young people that what happened to them mattered, that safety was not a privilege they had to earn, that being difficult to control was not the same as being difficult to love, but somewhere inside me, there had still been a 14-year-old girl waiting behind a dumpster, wondering if maybe she had deserved to be left there. After the wedding, after Brooke believed me, after the support group wrapped my story in hundreds of voices saying, "You were not alone," that girl finally stood up. That became the real lesson I carried forward into my work. Education is not only found in classrooms. Sometimes valuable knowledge begins when someone hears the truth about harm and learns the right name for it. Abandonment is not discipline. Silence is not healing. Keeping the peace is not noble if the peace depends on one person swallowing the truth forever. I still work with teenagers in Chicago. I still sit across from kids who are called too emotional, too angry, too sensitive, too much. And when they ask me if speaking up will fix everything, I tell them the truth. Maybe not. But it can fix the lie inside you that says your pain only matters if the people who caused it approve. I never got my $2 bill back. I did not want it. For 18 years, it had reminded me of the night I was discarded. Now it sits somewhere in Tyler's memory, and probably in Brooke's too, not as a weapon, but as evidence. My father lost contracts. My mother lost her perfect circle. Tyler lost the future he tried to build on a false version of himself. And I gained something quieter, but stronger. I gained the right to tell my story without asking permission from the people who made it painful. So if you have ever had to choose between keeping the peace and protecting the child you used to be, I hope you know this. You are not selfish for naming what happened. You are not cruel for refusing to carry shame that belongs to someone else. Sometimes healing is not forgiving the people who hurt you. Sometimes healing is finally telling the truth, letting the right people hear it, and walking away before anyone can leave you behind again.
Our team puts time and effort into every story, hoping to bring viewers both emotional entertainment and meaningful messages. This video is completely fictional and made only for storytelling and educational purposes. We hope it reminds viewers that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop explaining yourself to people committed to understanding you.